everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into the future of EV maintenance.
Sounds electrifying.
Get it? Okay, I'll stop with the dad jokes. But
Huh.
seriously, we're taking a deep dive into an article I found super intriguing. It's called Educational Article, The Future of EV Maintenance with Amber.
I'm happy to be here to break it down with you.
And for our listeners who aren't familiar with you, tell them a bit about your background.
Sure thing. I've been knee-deep in the world of automotive technology for over 10 years now.
Perfect. You're the ideal person to have on for this. So, you always hear that electric vehicles are basically computers on wheels, right?
All the time.
Well, this article really dives deep into what that actually means for like repairs and upkeep.
Yeah, and it's more than just a catchy phrase. I mean, it really is a whole different ballgame when you're talking about maintaining an EV versus a traditional gas-powered car.
Right, because it's not about like changing the oil anymore. It's about software updates. And I don't know, is it weird to think of your car needing like software updates like your phone?
Not at all. And that's exactly what this article highlights, the fact that EVs are packed with sensors and software that are constantly generating tons of data. And that data is a gold mine when it comes to maintenance.
Okay, I can see where this is going. More data means.
More ways to diagnose and predict potential problems. Imagine a world where your car tells you it needs a tune-up before you even notice a problem. That's the kind of proactive maintenance that we're talking about here.
Wow, that would certainly put an end to those range anxiety moments, wouldn't it?
Exactly. And it's not just about range anxiety either. Think about things like tracking your battery's temperature, how many charge cycles it's gone through, even things like driving habits. All of that data can be used to predict potential issues before they even arise.
So we're talking about like next level preventative maintenance here.
Exactly.
And that's where this company, Amber, comes in, right?
Right. Joe Pack, the founder, is really onto something.
They're all about making owning an EV completely stress-free.
Precise.
And they do that through a subscription model.
Exactly. Think of it like Apple Care, but for your EV.
You pay a monthly fee, and in return, you get peace of mind knowing that proactive maintenance and any necessary repairs are taken care of.
That's the idea, yeah.
Huh.
Though, like with any subscription model, there are some potential downsides to consider.
Right, like what happens if you need a major repair that isn't covered by your subscription? Could it end up being more expensive in the long run?
That's the million-dollar question.
It feels like everything is becoming a subscription service these days.
It really does. But I think for now, let's keep our focus on what this means for EV maintenance, which is what Amber seems to be really tackling head on. And when we talk about EV maintenance, we have to talk about the battery.
Right, because the battery is like the heart of an EV.
Exactly. And the article uses the early Nissan Leafs as a perfect example of what can go wrong when battery management isn't a top priority.
Ah, yes. The early Leafs. Those had some, shall we say, issues.
To put it mildly.
Didn't they skimp on the cooling systems or something like that to cut costs?
They did, and it backfired big time. Those batteries were overheating and degrading at an alarming rate.
It's a cautionary tale if I've ever heard one.
It really is. It shows just how critical it is to invest in really robust thermal management systems for these batteries.
So for those of us who aren't like battery scientists, can you break down why that is? What's going on at the chemical level that makes heat so detrimental to a battery's lifespan?
Of course. So inside a lithium-ion battery, like the ones you find in EVs, you've got all these chemical reactions happening during the charging and discharging process. And a natural byproduct of those reactions is heat.
Okay, that makes sense. Heat is just a part of the equation.
It is. But here's the thing. When that heat builds up too much, it can actually start to degrade the battery's internal components. And that leads to a loss of capacity over time, meaning your battery won't hold a charge as well as it used to.
So it's like the battery is slowly being cooked from the inside out.
In a way, yes. Yikes. Okay, so that's where a good thermal management system comes in.
Exactly. And that's one area where companies like Tesla really hit the nail on the head from the beginning. They understood the importance of investing in top-of-the-line cooling and management systems to keep those batteries happy.
And it shows. I mean, so some Tesla owners are hitting like 500,000 miles on their original batteries. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So how does Amber's platform help with battery longevity? They're not installing fancy new cooling systems, are they?
No, they're not. Their approach is more about using data to monitor the battery's health in real time. Think of it as a Fitbit, but for your EV's battery.
I like it. So what kind of stuff is it monitoring? Pretty much everything. Temperature fluctuations, how many charge cycles the battery's gone through, even driving patterns. They're looking for any red flags that might indicate a potential problem down the line.
That's wild. It's like having a whole team of battery doctors on call 24/7.
Exactly. And it's not just about saving people money on repairs either. This whole approach to battery care has some major implications for sustainability too, which is something this article really emphasized.
Right, because making those batteries in the first place isn't exactly, you know, environmentally friendly.
It's pretty resource intensive, to say the least. You've got to mine all those materials like lithium and cobalt, and those mining operations can be pretty tough on the environment.
And then there's the whole manufacturing process and getting those batteries shipped all over the place. It all adds up.
It does. So the longer we can make each battery last, the better, right?
Yeah.
It means we're reducing the need to mine and manufacture new ones, at least for a while.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So we're talking about stretching out that battery's lifespan as long as possible.
Exactly. And when that battery finally does reach the end of its life, we need to make sure it's recycled properly.
So those valuable materials don't end up in a landfill somewhere? It's kind of mind-blowing to think about. This company, Amber, focusing on keeping those EV batteries healthy, could actually have a ripple effect on the environment.
It shows how interconnected these things really are, right? And this leads to another fascinating aspect that the article touches on, the future of how we own cars.
Oh, right. Like that whole idea that we might not even be buying cars outright anymore, but instead subscribing to transportation as a service.
Exactly. Imagine subscribing to a service that gives you access to an autonomous electric vehicle whenever and wherever you need one.
It would be like having a personal chauffeur, but instead of a person, it's a self-driving EV. I could get used to that. Although, I think I'd miss being able to blast my music in the car without judgment.
That's fair. I feel that. But in all seriousness, this shift toward transportation as a service raises some interesting questions about where companies like Amber fit in.
Because their whole business model is built around keeping individually owned EVs running smoothly, right?
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, how does that translate to a world where we're sharing self-driving cars?
Right. It's not like you'd be subscribing to Amber for one specific car anymore. It would be more like, I don't know, maybe they become the go-to maintenance provider for these massive fleets of shared vehicles.
That's one possibility. And think about the amount of data they'd be able to collect if they were managing the maintenance for thousands, maybe even millions of EVs.
Whoa, that's a lot of data. It would be like having a finger on the pulse of the entire EV ecosystem.
Exactly. It's a pretty exciting prospect, though it does make you wonder what it means for traditional car manufacturers.
Right. What happens to companies like, say, Ford or Toyota if people aren't buying cars outright anymore?
It's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And I'm not sure anyone has the answer just yet.
It's definitely a lot to wrap your head around. All this talk about shared autonomous vehicles and subscription services, it's like we're on the verge of a whole new era of transportation.
It's an exciting time to be following the automotive industry, that's for sure. Though with all this talk about the future, we shouldn't lose sight of what this means for us right here, right now.
Good point. So, what does it all mean? What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into EV maintenance and the company Amber?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that electric vehicles are fundamentally changing how we think about car care.
Right. It's not your grandpa's Oldsmobile anymore, is it?
Not even close. We're talking about sophisticated machines that generate mountains of data. And companies like Amber are figuring out how to harness that data to make owning an EV as smooth and stress-free as possible.
And potentially way better for the environment, especially when you factor in the whole battery longevity thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Making those batteries last as long as possible is crucial, both from a cost perspective and an environmental one.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I've got one final thought-provoking question for you. We've talked a lot about how this whole subscription model, combined with these longer-lasting EVs, could really shake things up in the car ownership department. But what about used EVs? What happens to the market for those if batteries are lasting longer and maintenance is potentially covered by a subscription?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's one that I don't think anyone has a definitive answer to yet.
Yeah, because right now, one of the big concerns about buying a used EV is, like, how much life is left in the battery, right?
Exactly. But if you've got companies like Amber providing detailed maintenance histories and potentially even extending warranties through their subscriptions, it could really change the game for used EVs.
Imagine that. A world where used EVs hold their value much longer because buyers aren't as worried about the battery or unexpected repair costs.
It would be a game changer.
Mm.
And as with any major market disruption, it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Totally agree. Well, this has been an eye-opening deep dive for sure. We've gone from the nitty-gritty of EV batteries to the potential for a future where we're all zipping around in self-driving cars on demand.
And we couldn't have done it without our listeners. Thanks for joining us on this journey as we explore the ever-evolving landscape of electric vehicles. It's going to be an interesting ride.
I'll buckle up for that. Until next time, everyone, keep on driving into the future.